Hi there, welcome back to the Grape Explorer. In today's video, we're going to be looking at an absolute Italian superstar. That's Sangiovese. If you're new to this channel, welcome. This is the Grape Explorer. Here we do wine education, product reviews, and lots of wine tastings. So if you're interested in all things wine, consider subscribing. So Sangiovese, an absolute superstar indeed. And what we'll do in this video is give you a little bit of history about this grape, where you'll find it grown around the world, how it performs in the vineyard, what's produced in the winery, and then some of those all-important flavours and aromas. And I've got some in a glass with me today, so we'll spend a little time going through that as well. But let's start off with the history of this particular grape. It derives its name from the Latin Sanguis Jovis, which means, translated, the blood of Jupiter. The first documented mention of Sangiovese was in 1590, where it was noted in Tuscany as a grape that made very good wine, but if the winemaker was not careful, they risked turning it into vinegar. But it wouldn't be until the 18th century that Sangiovese would gain widespread attention throughout Tuscany. And in the 1970s, Tuscan winemakers began a period of innovation by introducing modern oak treatments and blending the grape with other non-Italian varietals, something that we've come to know these days as Super Tuscans. So of course, much of the history is in Italy, and so it won't come as a surprise that the place where this is grown predominantly is in Italy, specifically Tuscany. But there are some other places where it's grown in the world as well. So as I say, where Sangiovese plantings are found worldwide, the grape's homeland is central Italy. The grape was taken to South America, where it achieved some popularity in the Mendoza region of Argentina. It also found some popularity in California around the late 1980s, as it was seen as a good alternative to French grapes. And then finally, it can also be found in smaller quantities in France, Australia, Turkey and Greece, amongst a host of other countries. But it really is Italy, the birth of Sangiovese, where you'll still find most of the production today. And as I say, that's centred around Tuscany. And it's the most widely planted red grape variety, where it accounts for approximately 10% of all vineyard plantings throughout Italy. It's the solitary grape in the wines of Brunello de Montalcino, and it's the primary component in the wines of Chianti, Vino Nobile de Montepulciano, and many of those Super Tuscans, those blends. It's really versatile, producing everything from everyday drinking to premium wines in a variety of styles as well. And so, as I say, we're talking about an incredibly versatile grape. And those are the kind of grapes that I really like, the kind of grape where you can really work with it in a number of different ways to produce a number of different styles. But before we get onto some of those styles, how does Sangiovese perform in the vineyard? It is very adaptable to many different types of vineyard soils, although it particularly finds itself thriving in soils with a high concentration of limestone. The grape itself requires a long growing season. It has a tendency to bud early and then is slow to ripen. It really requires sufficient warmth and able to ripen fully. However, too much warmth and its flavours are going to become diluted. That longer growing season is giving the grape the time to develop richness and potential body. And in cool vintages, this can result in grapes having high levels of acidity and harsh unripened tannins. And that would also be reflected in some of those aromas. They're going to start to get much greener, much stalkier, much more herbaceous. So once we've got our grapes harvested in the vineyard and we've moved on to the winery, what can we expect from Sangiovese? That high acidity combined with the light body in the grape can present certain problems to winemakers. It can also lack some of the colour creating phenolic compounds. As a result of this, winemakers throughout the world have employed a number of different techniques to get the most out of the grape. This can include things like adjusting the temperature and the length of fermentation, as well as employing extensive oak treatments, extending the maceration period or blending with the other grapes. Now of course, altering the temperature and extending that maceration period is going to do a couple of things, especially try and withdraw more of the colour out of the wine and extract more of the body out of the grape. And then, as I say, that blending is often a really popular technique used, particularly where the grapes aren't necessarily giving you what you would like, to therefore produce a single varietal. It's a good idea to then blend with other grapes to produce a much more palatable wine. So let's think about some of those aromas that you can expect from Sangiovese. We'll look at this from a cool and a warm vintage perspective. If we're thinking about a cool vintage, we're at the high acidity end of the red fruit scale, so red fruit and raspberry. And because it's a cool vintage, we may get some of those greener, more herbaceous types of notes, and so it's not unusual for tomato plant to be a common descriptor. And then moving on to warm vintages, we start to get more red cherry, perhaps some blackberry. Perhaps we might start to get some warmer notes coming through, particularly where that oak use has been put in place. So things like vanilla, cloves, and sometimes you can even get kind of leathery type aroma as well. So as I say, the vintage, how that growing season has proceeded, can really have a material impact on the outputs of the wine, what ends up in the bottle and in your glass. So what have I got in the glass today? Well, I picked out a Chianti. To me, I automatically associate Sangiovese with Chianti, but it's not just a Chianti, it's actually a Chianti Classico. And so because it's labelled in that way, that tells me a couple of things about this particular wine. One, it tells me that the alcohol by volume needs to be above 12%, and it also tells me that this wine will have spent a minimum 12 months aging before release. And that's because Chianti does label its wines in a number of different ways. You have straight up Chianti on the label, you might have Chianti Classico, or you might have Chianti Classico Reserva. But what about this particular wine? What stuck out for me? Well, I've actually been enjoying this one over the last few days. That's actually an empty bottle, but I did save a little bit for this video. The thing that really jumped out to me with this particular Chianti Classico was a tart cherry type note that I got on the aroma, and that was coupled with a real dry herb sensation that I was also getting. I've had this one sitting in the glass for a little while now actually, so it's really had a chance to open up. But to me it's still that cherry with the dry herbs, and then just a sort of nuance of black plum coming into this one as well. On the palate, this one has medium acidity. It's got a good length to it, but the taste profile that comes through is that slightly tart, slightly underripe red cherry flavour. But it is mostly fruit on the palate, where I was getting some of that herbiness on the nose. When it comes to the palate, it's a really fruity, enjoyable wine. Very soft tannins, low tannins on this one. Quite a light body on this one as well, but a lovely finish with it. So there we go, there is a quick review of Sangiovese, the grape of Italy. I hope you found this one really useful. Let me know your favourite Sangioveses in the comments section below. But for now, I'll say cheers, and I'll see you all again soon. Cheers.